Hi everybody, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a story about a D&D player that tries to make the game all about themselves. Then, we have a story where a dungeon master doesn't let a particular player do anything cool, and then forces a surprise pregnancy on them, only for the game to go out with a whimper. But before we get into these stories of D&D cringe, let's let Luna brighten up our moods a bit. I definitely think she likes being an indoor kitty now. But with that boost of wholesomeness, let's dive right into these D&D horror stories. The It's About Me Player I Had by Reddit user All the Jokes. Hi, I am a dungeon master that has been playing for over 3 years. This is a small rant / small stories about the many challenges me and my players were put through by our problem player. Problem player we shall call May Major. The other players were a rogue, sorcerer, and bard. Problem player was a fighter. So the campaign had been going on for some time. The other players had already finished a small arc involving an insane druid when sorcerer said they had a friend who would love to join. I asked them to tell their friend to message me so I can see what they want to play and such. May messages me and is very polite and nice and wants to join in as a noble fighter, and as such had chosen to play a samurai fighter, and would not listen to me when I said that the subclass had no impact on how her character should act. In the business, we call this foreshadowing. In retrospective, I should have seen the red flags when May asked for their own custom-made class, which involved shouting at the enemy phrases that would trigger effects, and I quote, "Shouting, I shall slay you, for quadruple damage on the next attack." This idea was immediately shot down. However, the demands would not end. May asked for a custom background, custom race, and custom magic items. I made their race and background because she desperately wanted to be a cannibalistic monster that used to be an executioner because she had to kill 1,000 people to get back to the Feywild. More on that later. Well, I would say that the red flags are already shining brightly. Now, in the very first session this character was introduced, she made a flower crown while the other characters were shopping, and when Sorcerer refused to wear it, May responded by punching Sorcerer in the face. Funnily enough, the Sorcerer had more strength than the fighter, and retaliated swiftly. Now, we all know this is not how a group of player characters should act. However, we granted her leeway because she was very new. May messaged me a couple of days after the session with her explanation as to why her character reacted with violence to the flower crown incident, something she had made up after the fact, and asked if she could narrate her 2-page flashback at the start of the next session, or if I could do it. There was definitely salt when I pointed out the fact that that would serve no purpose, except to make the other player feel bad, considering none of the other player characters would see this flashback. For many sessions after this, a couple of patterns started to emerge, such as stating, "I'm going to go ham," every time they used Action Surge, lying about how many times they had used Action Surge, forgetting to subtract damage, forgetting how many times the special ability for Samurai was used, constantly complaining to be the bravest and the tank of the group, but running away during a fight, and complaining and nagging at Bard while demanding they ran after her in order to heal, going so far as to refer to the Bard as the medic, as well as the super cringy habit of saying, "Howdy partner," to any and all NPCs they met. This is not including doing rude gestures in real life to me, then claiming them to be, quote, from her homeworld and good things when someone commented on it. She would also speak German when using deep speech, even to me, which was very frustrating considering the DM should know all languages. It seemed to me that she had a need to make the sessions about herself, So therefore, I switched the NPCs around to not be very interested in her, which prompted her to create her, quote, kill list, where she wrote down the names of every NPC she planned to kill once she felt she had leveled up enough if they slightly pissed her off. So, moving from Spotlight Hog to Murder Hobo. Now keep in mind, she acted like a spoiled princess and would sass every character she met. This list included, but was not limited to, the only priest in the town they stayed in for daring to question her faith, the leader of a massive pirate organization and their main mission giver, no idea why, an NPC that had a deal with another player to heal their wings, which was a massive deal to said player. They were interested in what race she was. Other player characters, mainly the bard for some reason, didn't heal good enough, I guess. An entire village of lizard folk. They did not worship her upon seeing her. And an NPC from another character's backstory for beating her in a carnival game. Now, at this point, I'm sure you are wondering why we didn't throw her out. And seeing all this listed up, I'm wondering so myself. But it doesn't stop there. May made it into her personal mission to make the bard as obsolete as possible, going as far as trying to take the skilled and skill expert feat to be as good in the same skills, trying to multi-class into paladin in order to remove the need for the healing that the bard provided, and even trying to learn how to play music. This bitterness went so far as to make it a mission that was mentioned out of character that she wanted to talk with me to figure out a way to permanently curse the bard, which when I shot it down, was changed to, quote, make the bard believe I cursed them. Geez, what did the bard do to enrage her so? Now, there is something I didn't know where to mention, so I shall mention it here. May wrote her character's backstory, and oh sweet Bahamut, was it a backstory. So May's character was from the Feywild, and had been banished from there by the Queen of the Summer Court for crimes against the Feywild. To give you a retelling I have in my head, May was born in a small village that, after some time, was attacked by someone in the Feywild. So far so good. Now, this person was then completely destroyed by a Kitsune. She never asked if I allowed those in the Feywild. The Kitsune left, and May dies, but is then revived when her wife puts her heart and entire blood vein system inside of May's body. This transfusion was done by a goddess, also demanded to be custom made by the way, and would make sure that May lived forever. This would lead to May going to the Kitsunes, becoming everyone's favorite ever, gaining levels, I suppose, and then conquering a massive area of the Feywild. This was very strange, as the player kept insisting that her character was from a small and unknown cult, that at the same time was big enough that the Summer Court and its queen personally banished May to the material plane, instead of just killing her. This backstory never reached to the banishment point, but over 6 chapters were planned. The player wrote all of this, despite me saying to them very clearly that backstories are for when your character was level 0 to 3, and the feats and conquest in the backstory alone would have been impressive for a level 14 character to pull off. But the players were all level 6. Now, outside of the game, May was a bit of a snake, with being sugar sweet near me, while harassing the bard every time she drove him home. Seriously, what was her issue with the bard player? I don't get it. This also came with love bombing the group by buying us snacks, dice, and drinks, so there was a lot of conflict. Eventually, one of my players reached out to her and asked her if she was willing to change, because as she was playing now, it was not compatible. Her response was to say that she was, quote, uninvited by that specific player and leaving. A final thing I'd like to mention was that she had a terrible habit of metagaming, in the sense she would look up the monsters that I described with the excuse that she wanted to see what they looked like, as well as stating what she wanted her fellow players to do out of character, going so far as to demand bardic inspiration in order to wrestle an NPC mentioned earlier. Ah, so maybe that is where the animosity for Bard came from. Now she is nothing but a memory for us. She cut off all contact with Sorcerer and probably blocked us. I haven't bothered to check. TLDR, entitled player gets every accommodation from DM and fellow players, but just keeps demanding more and more while gaslighting and playing the victim. Edit. Many people have commented that I enabled this, and as I've mentioned in the comments, because of her love bombing and the group dynamic functioning as, quote, we don't throw out or invite new players unless everyone is okay with it. And because my group is made up of my friends, my hands were tied. Yeah, it certainly sounded like this player suffered from a litany of problem player behaviors, from being a spotlight hog to being a murder hobo, by making the list of characters that she had any little issue with, not to mention the obvious targeting of the Bard player. Heck, in her first session, she initiated PvP with another character after just joining the party. I would say that if the behavior was that disruptive, that it was bothering other players, that they should have all talked to her about it. But apparently that wouldn't have worked, because when just one player mentioned anything about it, she handled it like a child and took it as being kicked out and left. So I guess there is a silver lining in that she kind of kicked herself out, so the other players don't have to deal with her antics anymore. So all's well that ends well. Let's move on to the next post. I quit a 6 years long campaign, DnD 3.5, right before the final boss fight, cause I couldn't endure my frustration anymore. By Reddit user, Various Skill 5313. I'm sorry if I make mistakes. English is not my first language, and I need a place to vent, cause I'm going crazy. This campaign was based around the Danmachi enemy setting, and for those of you that don't know, in Danmachi, normally you'd get a special perk depending on your performance in the dungeon. Like, if you're someone that ran away a lot of times from a monster, you'd eventually develop a skill named Coward, and it increases your movement speed when, well, you run away from encounters. But here, things worked differently. You would get a skill every 3rd level, and its rarity and ability depended on a D100. Of course, the rarer the skill, the stronger it was. They were all created by the DM, with no real bias whatsoever. There wasn't a chart we could read to get an understanding of what we could get. And so, for at least us players, it was all random. There was even a chance for us to get no skills at all in a roll. I'm not gonna lie, that is a bit confusing. Add a dungeon master who thinks that NPCs should have the same importance as the players, and this system was doomed to fail from the start. I played a bard that had a very simple and humble background. She was the daughter of a librarian of a small village, and her reading all the stories there got her inspired and longing to be a legendary hero, like the people in her books. At first, everything was going pretty well. The Dungeon Master was very good at roleplay, and it felt like I was actually talking to someone. But then, the first combat with NPCs as our allies came along. They all had special skills, which synergized pretty well with them, and with the fact that they all had actual class levels and build depth. They were pretty strong. Stronger than us, in fact. And that was the start. After that, the number of allies, and even enemies, with these unique skills only became more common, killing the entire rarity importance of these skills. That's not to say that any of us didn't get lucky with the skills that we rolled, but it was nothing compared to the NPCs. In fact, by the time I reached level 17, I only had one useful and powerful skill, which was to decide to naturally crit with a 20 in any d20 roll, apart from saving throws. But all the rest I had were completely useless. I could create a mundane, very small and crude item for nothing once per day as a fast action. My hands were +1, which is completely useless for a bard. I could make a clone of myself, but the drawbacks were so bad that I couldn't actually use it. I had to half my total HP, we both shared the same resources, and I had to use a standard action to use it. Considering my hit dice was a d6, and even a d4 sometimes, I didn't have a lot of HP, and one simple AoE spell could have easily killed me. Moving on, in the first half of this campaign, I felt like a secondary character. Remember earlier where I said you could only get skills every 3 levels? Well, you could actually get them through advancing the plot of the campaign, which all of my party members got, but not me. They all got super cool and unique abilities. Consider this. Our party was a wizard, a paladin, and a hexblade. The paladin got to share his god power, and he had a unique bond with him, and a unique sword. He was his avatar, his champion. The hexblade was the prince of all the Xenos, which is a race of intelligent monsters that live in the dungeon, and could resurrect dead people as Xenos. He also had cool shadow powers, and could make himself ethereal. The wizard got blessed by entities from beyond this world, and could predict the future by reading the stars. He also could have access to knowledge checks that only he could do. He had homebrew OP spells, and we discovered that his family were actually the protectors of the material plane of all of this DM's campaigns. He could also create a safe bubble between planes, which gave us time to heal ourselves in peace during battles, where the only thing that I got from my background was an NPC from my hometown, which later became my husband. Yeah, the NPC was strong and all, but everyone got an actual ability which their character gets to use and shape the story, where I got the aid of an NPC, which wasn't like a dragon or some powerful entity. No, just your ordinary rogue with a unique skill, whereas I wanted to feel unique. I wanted to feel powerful like the others, but nonetheless, this never happened, and it only got worse. So much, in fact, that my bard got nicknamed, quote, "living to hit bonus," by the other players. Yeah, that is kind of lame. All the other players got these super cool abilities, and what does OP get? The power of marriage. I, of course, talked to the DM about it, how I felt frustrated that NPCs were stronger and felt more important than me, the issue about the skill system that he invented, and the fact that I didn't get any kind of special skills, but nothing could get through his head. The only thing that really changed, I guess, was the number of future NPCs with unique skills, but it didn't really make a difference. I endured all of it because I had fun role-playing. Even though the fights sucked, they were all super lethal. We could die from a simple random encounter, and our dungeon master didn't give us magic items, which in 3.5 are super important. At the end of the first half of the campaign, and one of the major arcs of the story, my bard made a speech before the fight with the BBEG so good that my dungeon master rewarded me and my allies with a giant morale bonus to hit and damage. It was a +10, and my bardic inspiration at the time only gave a +4, which is already pretty huge in 3.5. But just right before the start of the fight, this non-magical buff got dispelled by the BBEG, and I felt bad. Really bad. For the first time in this campaign, I felt rewarded by my efforts, and it lasted nothing. Later, the Dungeon Master explained that thanks to my buff, the BBEG's dispel couldn't remove our other buffs, but that doesn't mean crap to me. Like, what the F? Why can't you just let me have this? Yeah, I can imagine that that was a bit of a punch in the gut. The one time OP's character contributes something really cool for the fight, and the DM just takes it away in an instant. And so, that was the end of the first half. We saved an important town from the BBEG at the time, and everyone got a happy epilogue. But my bard wasn't renowned at all for being an outstanding adventurer. No, in her epilogue, the DM explained that she became a famous musician instead. I felt frustrated, but I knew that this wasn't the end of the story, because the DM had a second season planned, and he assured me that he had big plans for my character. Fast forward a couple months, and this second season starts, but we'll skip this, and we'll fast forward again by 2 years in real life. The only thing of importance was that our old party was sealed in time in the deepest part of the dungeon. Eventually, the new party saved the old one, and we got to play both of them sometimes. I discovered that my character got pregnant, which is something that I told my DM I didn't want with my husband, and that the fetus is under an enchantment that protects it from harm, so I could fight normally as I always did. Seriously? I swear, what is it with dungeon masters and forcing pregnancy onto player characters? Why is this such a common thing in these stories? I, of course, didn't like this at all. Forced pregnancy is disgusting, but the way the DM made me discover it created an emotional scene, which all the other players liked, and so I thought to myself that maybe it was all part of the big plans that my DM had, so I endured this too. And I lied to him that I liked his idea at the end of the session, even though he said, "I was worried that you wouldn't have liked it, and I was prepared to try and convince you." But it felt bad to turn him down at the time. I didn't want to ruin his plans, nor ruin the scene he created. No, F that. OP explicitly told the Dungeon Master that that wasn't something they wanted to happen with their character's husband, but he did so anyway. I don't care how emotional the scene was, or how much the other players liked it. OP should have put their foot down and said no. Though, that's just my opinion. I mean, I realize that OP was under peer pressure with this, but I hate it when DMs do this type of thing. Moving on. For the rest of the second half of the campaign, everyone eventually got an upgraded version of their past unique skill, where I didn't get crap, even this time, and I was really worried that it was it, that the pregnancy was the big plan after all. The wizard even got to turn all of the world back in time to save us from a TPK. Throughout the campaign, the Dungeon Master always hyped us up with bites of lore about the Black One-Eyed Dragon, which is the only living dragon in this setting, and the strongest opponent that we could ever encounter. Eventually, we were down to the last sessions, and I finally discovered the meaning behind my pregnancy. Apparently, my character is blessed or something by the overgod of this setting, and the child I'm carrying is super important. This blessing made it so that we successfully skipped an unbalanced boss fight, in which the boss acknowledged me as the quote, chosen one, and let us go to meet the Black One-Eyed Dragon, which for plot reasons we have to defeat or we doom the world. So this was our real final fight, and we only had one chance. The Dungeon Master gives a long intro before rolling initiative to the boss fight, and right at the end, tells us to roll a reflex saving throw to defend ourselves against the Black Dragon's breath attack. My character doesn't pass the DC, and I get 40 d6 worth of damage in my face, which quickly drops me to 30 HP. Then the Dungeon Master asks if anyone is below half of their HP after this attack, and I have to roll for a fortitude saving throw. I roll a nat 1, and the DM asks me to roll 1d6, 1 meaning instant death by decapitation, 2 through 5 I lose a random limb, and 6, nothing happens. I also roll a 1, and I die. Not even during the fight, but right at the intro. We didn't even roll initiative. It just happened. Dude, what the heck? I understand it's the final fight, but come on. The Dungeon Master didn't need to make that happen. Why even give the final boss a chance of just taking one of the players out before the fight even begins? That is BS in my book. I mean, if I were a DM, I would not even want there to be a chance of one of the players not being able to participate in the final fight of the campaign. Though, that's just me. I got so frustrated and angry about the fact that I lost the chance to fight the final BBEG, the true villain of this 6 years long campaign that got hyped since the start of it, that I just left the Discord call and told them to continue without me, because I'm not going to watch it anyways. In the end, the blessing that I had from the Overgod didn't mean crap during this fight, where I thought I was super important. But no, I just died in a pathetic way. Not even a cool description of it. I just died. They even won this fight without me. I wasn't needed at all. The Dungeon Master didn't even try to BS some Deus Ex Machina just to make me fight it for at least one round. Like, I really wouldn't have minded dying during the fight for at least one round, because then at least I would have gotten a chance to do something to have a lasting impact to the fight. But no, nothing at all. Off-roll, the party told me they could use a limited wish mid-fight to try and resurrect me, but that is such a bad action to do. It's a waste of an action in a fight where this effing dragon can one-shot people, cause what the F do I do after I get resurrected? In 3.5, a caster that is resurrected has a 50% chance to lose any given spell, and I would get back into the fight with 17 HP and a negative level. So not only would I have probably died again, but there was a big chance that I couldn't do crap, because what the heck does a caster do without his spell slots? So I just told them not to do that, cause I wanted them to win, and not waste an OP spell on me. At the end of the fight, the party tried to resurrect me, and I just told them no. No, I didn't want to continue. I didn't want to know what the purpose of this pregnancy was, or what the F my blessing was. I didn't want to do nothing at all anymore with this effing crappy campaign, nor how it ends, and so that's where I just quit. I talked to the Dungeon Master afterwards, told them again all my complaints of all the things I didn't like, how I felt like a secondary character, how I felt like every effing NPC was stronger and just overall better than me. And he explained to me that the big plans, after all, was just a secret ending. Some of you would think that it means a lot, right? I mean, it's an effing secret ending that only thanks to me we would get to have. But what the F do I do with an epilogue? If I wanted to read a book, I wouldn't have played this campaign. Everyone got to shape the story during the campaign the way they wanted thanks to their OP abilities, while I only got to watch. I wanted to feel powerful. I wanted my character to feel like the thing she always wanted to be, a legendary hero. But instead, all I got was the footstool of the party, the quote, living to hit bonus, and an effing forced pregnancy. Sorry if this whole story is confusing, but it's hard for me to write a recap. I just feel so many things right now. I'm mostly just disappointed. I had so much faith in my Dungeon Master in this campaign. I felt like my character was an actual living being, and right now, I just feel so bad that I wasted 6 years on this. Yeah, I would be a bit peeved too. To go that long with a party that all gets some pretty cool powers and buffs, and for your character's only big thing is to become pregnant. Not to mention, the one time OP did something cool with a speech and gave the party a big buff, only for that to be taken away first thing. You would think that through the years of playing, that the Dungeon Master would throw OP a bone and give them something that would make the fights a little more engaging for them. But no, just being knocked up. Then to be cut down just before the final fight begins. I can totally understand why OP is angry with this Dungeon Master, and I would highly reconsider ever playing in a game that he runs ever again after all of that. Though, what are your thoughts on this story? But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, especially if you roll a crit on that like button and subscribe, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.